Well, let's stay with advertising and brand development. And if you talk to a person in a language they understand, it goes straight to the heart. That's to paraphrase a famous quote from Nelson Mandela. Big brands are seemingly catching on to the fact that there are big returns to be seen if they speak to their audiences in their home language, particularly on a mass audience medium like radio. Lynn Joffe is with us, founder of the brand and content agency Creatrix. Welcome, Lynn. Good to talk to you. I would have thought it's fairly obvious that brands would understand that talk to a person in the dialect that the consumer understands, it's going to work well. Yet some are doing it, others are not. Why?
It seems incredible, but it's actually true, Jeremy, that in the last 20 years since transformation, that marketers and agencies who, of course, influence those marketers have actually almost left a black hole where not just speaking in mother tongue, creating for African languages in idioms and resonances that people will relate to. There are a lot of controversial reasons why. It's the way media is bought. It's the way that it's sold to clients. So, for example, Steven DeLon will have commercials up the kazoo, but nothing's happening on Pala Pala FM because people don't understand the vendor culture, for example. So it actually boils down to culture. I think it's people seeing a mass market, as you call it, but it's different cultural groups, different reactions to things. So in effect, I think the industry's kind of missed the point of what the heart means. Heart is not a 30-second ad. Heart is content. Heart is stories. And because radio and stories and literacy, because there's a huge literacy issue in this country, which is that people don't read and write in mother tongue, so the heard word becomes a kind of bypass to the literacy issue. But if agencies and marketers are not seeing it, it's almost like blinkered. It's almost like blindsided by the idea.
Lynn, I want to talk about the power and the influence of so-called ALS or African language radio stations in just a moment. But when it comes to the actual creation of this content in mother tongue, are the brands not pushing hard enough, or are the agencies themselves saying, well, we are not interested in doing it, or we just simply don't have the skills to make this happen?
Well, I mean,
Deep sigh, what's the answer?
No, it was a modesty sigh. If agencies are used to the traditional way and the new digital way, which we can't deny because branded stories are there, the expertise isn't necessarily within the agency to offer this kind of thing. We're talking about storytelling over weeks, building up destination listening, being on the ground with the broadcaster, finding out what the feedback is, who the winners may be if we've got a competition element, how people are responding, how they're being researched into brand love. It's not always just about sell my stuff, sell my stuff. It's very often about building a brand perception, a brand loyalty perception. That doesn't necessarily reflect on the bottom line. That reflects in attitudes over a vast period of time. So, for example, some of our campaigns that only last for 8 weeks, for example, you've spoken to the audience and you've just disappeared. So if you build up a loyalty in mother tongue, which you do, because you're not speaking down to people, you're speaking with people, with people, within their own linguistic and heart space, you better stay there.
And that, Lynn, I suppose, goes to the heart of the whole transformation debate within the brand communications complex. Let's move away to the ALS stations, African language stations. For instance, a radio station like Ukhozi FM, massive reach, the biggest radio station, not in South Africa.
The whole world.
The whole world. I was going to say the Southern Hemisphere.
Next to a Chinese radio station, which I believe has a higher listenership. The second largest radio station on Earth.
And by media definition, it should be full of advertising, yet it's not. Why?
It's unbelievable. I think it really has to do with in being able to speak mother tongue, which also relates to being able to relate to culture. Maybe the industry isn't going far enough. Now, we've done immersions through the country. When pitches come up and stuff, we actually go to the different areas. And the agencies are like, why are you doing that? If you can't get out into the community, and this does speak to the same ivory tower, and all respect to our colleagues, this is why we're in business, because we see that gap, if you want to call it that. It's been a gap for 20 years. You don't become an overnight sensation overnight. We've really been pushing this agenda, and so one can only look maybe to psychological issues with the industry as a whole, but the marketers who have picked up on this are absolutely committed to it. David Wingfield of ABSA is absolutely almost like a convert to the idea that speaking in mother tongue to people on their level with a message that has been culturally designed, if you want to call it that, to the way the market receives information and entertainment radio storytelling is a no-brainer.
So let's look at some of the work then and some of the output. You referenced someone called David Wingfield. He looks after marketing at ABSA.
ABSA, yeah.
You've created something called ABSAville.
ABSAville.
What is ABSAville?
Well, in a sense, what we're doing is we're taking the functional and emotional benefits of the brand and pertaining it to almost like a mirror image, if you like, or a reflection of society in that space. We're talking mid-LSM to low LSM, mother tongue speakers earning a certain amount. Storytelling then works for...
What's the plot construction? What's the narrative behind something like this?
Trade secrets. We always create a story arc narrative. So in ABSA's case, they speak about prosperity. Prosperity is not a translatable word conceptually. So that moves into the shared growth, which is a kind of the next phase down. We've moved in to the Umuntu space, which is a person because of other people. It's claiming a generic high ground, but it's pertaining it to the shared growth value in mother tongue. So we have a beautiful jingle. We have a beautiful sense of somebody affected. So in series 1, we had a daisy chain where one person affected the next person who affected the next person in that Ubuntu way.
But it's not hard product push. That's the secret with content marketing.
You have to have a brief and you have to have what you're going to speak about. So, for example, can I give a different example? Geisha with Unilever, we had to communicate the rights of the child, resilience, resourcefulness, hardworkingness, courage and stuff. So we actually created little animal stories, which then put those concepts forward without saying, buy my soap, because the strategy behind that was mother tongue, mother to child storytelling, for example. So with ABSA, obviously there's product, but all of that product comes down to the strategy of shared growth. And so the products are embedded within the storylines and people are using them and recommending them perhaps, but it's all within a narrative story that keeps people interested in character.
Lynn Joffe, an aspect of media that we haven't looked at before. It's an important aspect. Thank you very much for joining us, founder of the agency Creatrix.